Hello everybody, welcome to ProfRich English, and today we are taking your questions and we're going to answer all the questions that we can. So let's get started. Sleepwalker says, Rich, in what cases is the word punishment countable and uncountable? So there are many words in English which can be countable and uncountable in this way. And in explaining punishment, the way punishment can be countable and uncountable, we can also see a similar effect in other words. So the idea actually is, if we're talking about punishment as a concept or abstract idea, and it would help if I spelt it correctly, as a abstract idea, then it's going to be uncountable. So uncountable punishment, punishment as a concept or abstract idea. For example, punishment is a necessary part of law. Without punishment, the criminal justice system cannot be effective. So we're talking about punishment as a concept or abstract idea, and you can see here that it's acting in an uncountable way. There's no article, and we're using the singular form as we do for uncountable nouns. So how about as a countable noun? So, punishment as a countable noun is talking about a specific instance or specific example or case of punishment. For example, his punishment was too severe. Here, this is countable. Their punishments were too severe. There we can really see it's countable because now we've made that plural. So we know, in fact, that it's definitely countable. Well, I've never heard the expression two punishments are better than one, but you could say it in this way if you wanted to. So that's a case of when punishment is countable. Now, there are lots of words like this in English which can be countable and uncountable in exactly this way. I'm not talking about all countable and uncountable nouns, but I mean that there are some that act just like this way, like punishment. So we might also think of, for example, experience. Experience as a general concept. Experience is worth more than study. Here it is uncountable. And we can see there that we're talking about the concept or as an abstract idea. And we can also talk about specific cases of experience using experiences in a countable way. So experiences I had a great experience in France last year. I met some people, some great people at a cafe. They were Parisians. They offered to show me the city, and I had a great time. So look out for nouns in English that can be countable and uncountable. And when you notice that, ask the question, is this one of these? Is it one of these special uncountable nouns that Rich told me about? That when it's abstract or used as a concept, it's uncountable. And when it's a specific case, then it's countable. Some other examples, by the way, are fruit, work, paper. I want to say chicken, but actually chicken is more like countable as the animal. But when we say chicken as a material or as like a food type, then it's uncountable. So that's a little bit different. But look out for that anyway. All right, so that was our first question for today. And may I take a moment here to say welcome to the stream, everybody. If you are new here, it's a great time to smash that like button and hit subscribe. I am taking your questions in the chat. So if you're joining us live, then you can post your questions over there. And I will, of course, do my best to answer them. Just a point, I'm an English teacher, and anything that I say which is not directly connected to English teaching is just my opinion. So I can give you my expert opinion on English, but on other subjects, it's just my opinion. All right, so that's fine. Me and Alexander are having a great debate about the politics of the United Kingdom following our last video, but I just want to say I'm not really an expert in that. I'm just a person who lives here, and Alexander is entitled to his opinion, and I don't want to say that I'm coming with some special perspective here, apart from the fact that I'm English, obviously. Anyway, let's move on. What other questions do we have? Tetsuro says, what should I do to improve my listening skills? Well, Tetsuro, one thing you could do is listen to English live streams, especially with someone who speaks kind of naturally. Teachers on YouTube who speak in a not very natural way. It's very frustrating. I find it very difficult to do research on popular videos, because when I research popular videos, I just see really terrible examples of English, and then you look at the video and it's got 2 million views, 1.5 million subscribers, and honestly, I can't handle that. I'm sorry, I can't handle that. So watch out for the not very useful examples out there. But basically, to improve your listening skills, you need to listen to comprehensible input. That is the theory. It's Stephen Krashen's theory. We spoke about it tons of times. So improve your listening by listening to comprehensible input which interests you. So comprehensible means you can understand what I'm saying. So now, right now, Tetsuro, do you understand me? And I don't mean just a little bit. I mean, do you understand quite well? Do you understand, let's say, about 80% of what I'm saying? You don't necessarily have to know every word I'm saying. In fact, that doesn't matter at all. What matters is, do you understand me? If you do, you're currently getting good listening practice. Now, we can make it better if you're interested. So if you're interested in it, then it's better. If you understand and it's interesting, then it's great. All right? Then if you want to go one step further, then you need to start adding challenge. So that's when we ask, is it too easy? But we only ask that after we've looked at the other two questions. So we start with, do I understand it? 80%? Yes? Okay. Is it interesting? Yes? Okay. Now, let's ask the question, is it difficult enough? Or is it too easy? Right? We don't want to rest on our laurels, okay? If you listen to some very simple English over and over again, let's say, for example, let me give you an example. The example of someone who comes to England and works in a restaurant. And maybe they work in a restaurant in England for 5 years. But they still can't really understand English on the street. Why is that? Well, it's because they have this very simple and limited context. So although they may become very good at understanding customers giving their order in a restaurant, they're not challenging themselves. They need to go outside their comfort zone. But that question, that is important, but that question is the third question. That's what I want to emphasize. It's the third one. First, it's a bit weird because the first question is like the opposite of the third question, right? The first question is it easy enough? Then, is it interesting? And then, is it difficult enough? Okay? And that's it, basically, Tetsuro. That's my advice. And in terms of exactly what you should listen to, it doesn't matter. Anything. If you've asked the 3 questions and you're happy with the answer for all 3, anything. It can be a podcast. It can be a podcast about dancing. It can be the news. It can be a TV series that you're rewatching. Maybe you watched it in your own language 15 years ago. Star Trek: The Next Generation. Yes, I watched it when I was a young person in Venezuela. I watched El Star Trek: La Nueva Generación, right? And then 15 years later, I think, hey, I want to improve my English listening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch El Star Trek: La Nueva Generación, but now I'm going to watch it in original English version, Star Trek: The Next Generation. And of course, I know the story, so that really helps because I can watch it and I have this contextual knowledge. Now that's a magic situation. It's a magic situation. That's called scaffolding. Scaffolding is when you use someone or something to help you do something which you couldn't do without help, right? So in this case, our scaffolding, it's sometimes also referred to as the zone of proximal development in teaching. And this is when we do something more difficult by using a cheat, okay? And in this case, the cheat is we know the story already. And then we rewatch it. So we use the cheat to do something more difficult. And this can be very, very, very beneficial, especially for comprehension. It's one of the best things we can do with comprehension. And a good English teacher will do this with you all the time in class. So a good English teacher will get you tuned into something, give you some clues, and then give you a listening that's more difficult than your level, and you jump to the next level using the scaffolding, right? So I hope that helps, Tetsuro. And make sure you do, of course, smash that like button and hit subscribe. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. If Shakespeare's Hamlet and Nietzsche's Zarathustra met at a party, what would their conversation sound like and who would end up more confused? Thank you, Pavia, for one of the most creative questions that I have ever had on the channel. I'm going to invoke one of my special powers to answer this one, so get ready. All right, special power invoked. Zarathustra says, "O noble prince of Denmark, whose spirit roams restless, what wisdom seek ye amidst the whispers of the dead?" And Hamlet said, "Thou art a man of many insights, clad not in royal garb, but in the raiment of thought. Tell me, O Zarathustra, how dost thou find peace in this turbid world?" Okay, I'm not going to continue. This is an AI interpretation. But it's Hamlet who becomes confused first, according to GPT. Hamlet says, "Thy words spin about my head like the stars in the heavens. They are too much. My soul is dizzy with confusion. This conversation, methinks, leaves me more bewildered than enlightened. I am too confused to continue." So Hamlet will be the first to become confused. And I think I agree with that, actually, because Zarathustra is actually supposed to be a confusing character. Nietzsche did that deliberately. But Hamlet, I don't think Hamlet is supposed to be confusing. So it does make sense, I think, that Hamlet gets confused first. What's the funniest literal interpretation of an idiom you've heard from a student, and how did you explain its actual meaning? That's a bit of a tricky one, actually. There's nothing particularly coming to mind about that. But, you know, with idioms, it's quite rare that students interpret it literally. Like, students are pretty good at recognizing that something is an idiom. So it's quite rare that they make the mistake of thinking that it's something literal. But for some reason, they do often get confused about idioms. So, for example, a student very recently said, "This is really my cup of tea," which is a confusion about that idiom, because you can only use that idiom in the negative. So you can say it's not my cup of tea, but actually you can't say that it is your cup of tea. That doesn't quite sound right. And there was another one as well. Someone said an idiom from somewhere, it made no sense at all. I can't remember of the exact example, unfortunately, Pavia. But yeah, basically my answer to this is generally what happens is students have the wrong meaning for the idiom. So it's not that they have the literal interpretation, it's just that they have the wrong meaning for the idiom. And I think there's a few reasons for that. I think it's because when you learn idioms, you often learn them in a teaching context. And there's a lot of bad teaching going on from myself sometimes as well. I'm not perfect. So we all make mistakes teaching. And sometimes, you know, we say something like, "Oh yeah, the elephant in the room, yeah, it means like something embarrassing," right? But actually it doesn't, right? But sometimes someone might explain it like that. Like, "Oh, the elephant in the room, it's something embarrassing that no one wants to talk about." Something embarrassing that no one wants to talk about, right? But actually, that's not a perfect definition of the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is more general than that. It's more like the elephant in the room is the thing that everyone knows about, but we are ignoring, or we are deliberately not talking about it. So it's the obvious thing, and we're deliberately not talking about it. It's not necessarily embarrassing. Might not be embarrassing at all, right? It could be lots of things, but it's just the obvious thing that we are ignoring. That's all it is. So it's very easy to give a definition that's not perfect. In fact, it's almost impossible to give a definition which is perfect. So I think that's why this kind of confusion happens. Thank you, Pavia. I understand your conversation while listening, but I cannot remember the whole story. What should I do for this? This is an interesting question, Pachu, and I don't quite understand what you mean, actually. What do you mean when you say, I cannot remember, excuse me? What do you mean when you say you cannot remember the whole story? You mean you can't remember everything I say? Or do you mean you can't remember the words I say? I think I need you to be a bit more specific about that. Now, another thing to say is, when I answered Tetsuro's question before, Tetsuro was asking about improving listening comprehension, right? Whereas it seems like you are making a different point, because you're talking about you can't remember the story. Now, remembering the story is nothing to do with listening comprehension, right? Like, I understand a lot of things in the day, but I don't necessarily remember them. So remembering is not necessarily related to comprehension in that way. So I just want to make a point about that my answer before specifically was about improving listening comprehension, not about vocabulary or speaking or anything like that. I was talking about listening comprehension. Anyway, if you could rephrase what you mean, Pachu, about the whole story and you can't remember, give me some more details about this. What do you mean? And what is it that you want to talk about? I'll come back to that. $1 million question is, do you understand a richer speech for longer? For example, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90%. It's impossible to really put a number on it, isn't it? What was the first, the chicken or the egg, Manuel? If Nietzsche critiqued a narrative essay, would he argue that the death of the author applies to grammar rules too? Are you reading Nietzsche at the moment, Pavia? I'm going to make a confession. I'm a philosophy major, as we say, the United States. Internationally, people say major, right? So, okay. I'm a philosophy major. My degree is philosophy. I didn't study Nietzsche. I opted out of the Nietzsche module. Actually, I feel sad about that. I wish I had studied Nietzsche. What a nice bit of English grammar there. I wish I'd studied Nietzsche. Because actually, I quite like Nietzsche from what I hear, but I don't know him. My area of expertise in my degree and I did do a dissertation in my degree. I chose to do a dissertation. My area of expertise was Aristotle, and I did my dissertation on Aristotle's metaphysics, specifically Aristotle's Metaphysics Theta, where he discusses the qualities and capacities of objects in the world. So, yeah, my speciality was Aristotle. I tried to do Plato as well, but I didn't like the lecturer, so I changed. But yeah, unfortunately, no Nietzsche. Don't know about Nietzsche. So I don't know about this death of the author, which I probably should, because I think it's a cultural phenomenon that people talk about. But hey-ho. In my country, people often say cup of tea for positive. How? In what way, Alia? Like, they say like, oh, that's my cup of tea. Like that? Really? Like, oh, that's my cup of tea. Is that your cup of tea? Oh, yeah, that's my cup of tea. You mean like that? Interesting. I mean, that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, it's totally okay. Obviously, we have different conventions in different languages, you know? And I don't think that's a problem. But in British English, people don't often say it in the positive, if ever, actually. Are you sick? Why do you say that? No, I'm not. Oh, you mean because... No. I sneeze. Do you not sneeze? Sometimes I sneeze. Sneeze about once a day. Remembering is about your memory. Oh, let's go to Patches here. For example, I watch a film for 2 hours and I cannot remember the whole story. Well, can anyone, Pachu? Let me tell you something. When I was young, I was like this, the same. I couldn't remember the whole story of films. When I was a teenager, I couldn't. When I was in my 20s, I couldn't. And in my 30s, not so much. But now, I can. And I don't think that's about a natural memory or whatever. I think it's a few things. And I'll tell you, it's difficult. You know, I'm just one person who does some things, but I can tell you some things that may affect it. One, I take lots of natural supplements. I take vitamin B, vitamin D, multivitamin, fish oil, glucosamine, zinc, magnesium, potassium, right? So I take lots of supplements. Two, I don't drink. Ever. Zero alcohol. Okay? It's been a year now, no alcohol, not a drop, zero. Three, I don't do any drugs. Zero drugs. I'm not admitting to doing drugs when I was a teenager, but, you know, teenagers are teenagers. Wink, wink. So, they are kind of the biological things which I think affect memory. And by the way, you need to do it long term. It's not like, oh, I'll take some fish oil and I will stop drinking and I will do exercise and my memory will be better in 2 weeks. No. It's lifestyle change, and you'll see in like 6 months things get better, right? But don't really, to be honest, I'll be honest, a better memory was not my objective. Okay? I just wanted to be healthier in general, and the good memory came from that. But there's other things I do as well, Pachu, and they might be related, or it might be a change in behavior. And that is, I reflect a lot more. So, for example, now, when I watch a film, I think back to the film and I reflect about the film. I reflect about what happened, what scenes happened, when they happened, and why. In the past, I didn't do that. Now, I don't know, is that because my behavior changed? Is that because I used to drink beer when I watched the film, so I didn't want to reflect? Is that because, I don't know. I don't know why that is, but I'm just telling you that now I do it. And in the past, I didn't. And that reflection means thinking back, it really helps. So, that's all I can say. That's all I can say. If you guys want, then I can give you a list of the supplements that I take. I take them every day. I don't miss. And I get really annoyed if something is getting in the way and I can't take them. So I really try very hard to make sure I don't miss. So every day. And I've done that for about 3 years of taking supplements. Natural supplements, vitamins, minerals. So I'm happy to share those if you want, but just bear in mind, that's just personally what I take. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I cannot advise what you should or shouldn't take. And you should definitely check, especially the quantities, and check everything you're having, because you can overdose on certain vitamins, like vitamin A. That can be quite dangerous if you have a lot of vitamin A. So be careful with these things. You have to know what you're doing. But I can certainly give you the list of what I personally take per day. And again, I just want to emphasize, I'm not saying that the vitamins have done a magical thing. There's many changes, right? The vitamins, no alcohol, no drugs. I exercise regularly. I reflect, which maybe is behavior. I don't know. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Is this sentence grammatically correct? Enemy is on low health. Enemy is a countable noun. Yes, you should use an article. It should be the enemy. The enemy is on low health, not enemy. The enemy is on low health. That's what I would say. The enemy's on low health. They're on low health. The enemies are on low health. We need to have the articles. Another question from Pavia. Rich, what do you believe is the ultimate purpose of education? How does this belief influence your teaching methods? So eager to hear the answer from a wonderful teacher like you. Thank you, Pavia. I appreciate that. On the spot, I think that the ultimate goal of education is to enable and facilitate people to become a better version of themselves. I think that's the best way I can put it right now. We could go into specifics like improving quality of life or opening your mind or becoming more resilient, becoming more scalable. skeptical of authority. I believe that's something we should teach. It's quite oxymoronic to say that a teacher in authority should teach people to be skeptical of authority, but I believe we should. It's a personal belief. And yeah, it comes from this idea that I think we should teach people to be better versions of themselves. And if you really nail me to a wall or nail me to a cross about what does it mean to be a better version of yourself, then that is a tricky discussion beyond the scope of my capacity to answer live on stream. But I can tell you that it does encompass things like morality, quality, intelligence, diligence, personality, and so on and so on. Something like that. What's the difference between in pencil and with a pencil? I wrote it with a pencil, I wrote it in pencil. Oh, it's written in pencil. Ah, it's written with a pencil. I think I need more of an example, Dan, because they seem very, very close in meaning to me. In pencil sounds a bit better, really. I wrote it in pencil. I wrote it with a pencil. In pencil refers more to the actual text. So when I say I wrote it in pencil, I mean it is written in pencil. Whereas with a pencil is more like an adverb relating to my action. So I wrote with a pencil, right? And it relates to like me having the pencil and writing it. So I suppose you could say that in pencil relates more to the text and with a pencil relates more to my action. However, they are both adverbials that you can use with the verb. I wrote in pencil, I wrote with a pencil. But I'm just telling you semantically, that is in meaning, there's that difference. Sir, I want to know everything and anything in English. What should I do? Well, first of all, Pachu, you should celebrate because that is a great attitude. And with that attitude, you will definitely become excellent at English. If really you feel driven to know everything and anything in English, then you're good. You will get there. The wheels will keep going, and your English will just dum bum 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 bum. So no problem, right? You can be happy with that. Be happy with that motivation that your subconscious is providing you with. That's brilliant. As for what you should do, I need more specifics. Didn't I give you some advice before about improving memory? I suppose you could try that. Try working on yourself, working on your... You know what you could do, Pachu? Why don't you try to find a health podcast or a nutrition podcast in English that you can understand? Then you could listen to that to get some tips on using nutrition to become healthier. I don't know. Whatever you're interested in, go with your interests. What are you interested in? Yeah, Manuel knows all about this. I sneeze 500 times a day. Yeah, tell me about it. I sneeze twice a day. Twice a day. So Zoya says, young people aren't motivated to learn English or other languages. When they're older, they often regret it. So what do you do as a teacher to arouse the motivation? How do you strengthen the motivation? Yeah. It's tough. What you need to do, Zoya, is you need to approach as much as possible from a friendly perspective in terms of the interest of the student. So, if you've got a class of 14-year-olds who all spend their time playing Clash of Clans on mobile, so that's what they do, Clash of Clans, right? And then your class is about the present perfect to talk about holidays abroad, and the first thing they need to do is read a story about a holiday in another country, you have a problem, because you can force them to do it, but that's not particularly helpful in the long term. Although we sometimes do need to do things in that way to just force people to do it. But it's definitely not ideal. So instead, maybe we can do some classes on video games. If they like video games, let's get into it. Spark their interest. You can see when someone gets interested. You put up a picture of a video game and suddenly they're looking at it, right? Oh, what's that? Right? What you need to do, Zoya, to get motivation high is you need to appeal to a number of qualities that fit with the student. So one is the level of challenge. The level of challenge needs to be correct. If the English is far too difficult, but they are interested. Let's say they're very interested. So you put up the video game and they're like, wow, a class about video games, but the English is bad and they can't talk about video games. What happens? They talk in their own language about the video game with their friend. Oye, pues mira. Es ese. Ah, yeah. You know, it's like they start to talk to each other in their own language because they don't have the English to talk about it. So it's too difficult. So you need to get the challenge right. Not too difficult, not too easy. And then you need to get the interest. And there's a number of other challenges that you can think about. Cognitive challenge, so not only linguistic challenge, but what about how difficult it is for their minds? Because some people like a cognitive challenge. Like, for example, academic adults, they like grammar puzzles and cognitive challenges. You know, they enjoy that. But 13-year-old who, I don't know, plays football 5 times a week and doesn't read, doesn't like maths or whatever, you know, not very academic, they'll hate grammar exercises, right? They do not want to do that. It's not, the cognitive challenge is a mismatch. It's not the kind of challenge they want. And we can even talk about physical challenge. Unfortunately, often we are limited by our resources in the classroom to provide physical challenge. However, physical challenge can be a very engaging element of a class. And I do miss that at summer school when we had the ability to use physical challenge as well, throwing the ball around or doing physical games and stuff as you learn English. That can be fun. But anyway, the point is, you get these elements of challenge and the level of the English and the interest. If you hit those, then they're ready. And that's when you get your motivation, right? I'm interested in this. I have some English to express or to engage with it. It's not too difficult. It's not too easy, etc., etc. But motivation's a tricky one, Zoya. I mean, we can't work magic. Motivation is definitely an element of being a teacher, but, you know, no one's a magician. What's this, Pavia? How do you define a good life, and which philosopher's ideas align most closely with your definition? I'm not sure that it's possible to define a good life. And I don't want to tie myself to one philosopher either. So, can't help with that one, really. It's interesting to read about. People talk about hedonism. People talk about Don Juan, the Don Juan lifestyle. You know, people talk about other lifestyles. I think probably you do have to turn towards religion to start to get an idea of this. And when I say religion, I don't mean your idea of the institutions. I mean, you need to go on a spiritual journey, a personal spiritual journey where you will seek God. For God, you may. But anyway, you're going to seek God. And it must be a personal journey. Don't let anyone start to direct you, because you can easily be misdirected. We see that all the time, right? But you're the one. It's about you having this relationship with the universe, with God, finding your way. And I don't have more to say than that. I'm not a spiritual guide. So good luck. Dear sir, could you tell me how to teach students who are not willing to learn? I think I just spoke about that a little bit. So, appeal to interest, appeal to challenge, English challenge, cognitive challenge, and physical challenge. Try to get a good balance. But ultimately, if you have someone who just 100% does not want to learn, there's not a lot you can do. Let's say I have a student, right? In a perfect world, I have a student who's 14 and their parents say, this guy needs to learn English, and he's in my class 1-to-1, and he likes football, and I'm showing him English football. And then he says to me, look, Rich, I enjoy football. I like the topic of the class, and it's great to talk about it, but I don't care about English. I really don't want to learn English anymore. I just don't care about this. I'm never going to care about this. And really, I just want to go and talk about football with my friends in Spanish, right? my controversial perspective on that would be, okay, then do that. And if you wish to learn English in the future, send me an email. Good luck. Now, the parents won't like that, but that's sort of my perspective. Then you might ask me, like, well, what about if the guy's 10 years old? What if it's an 8-year-old boy? What if it's the 6 years old? I don't know, that's a tricky question. And luckily, as I only teach older teens and adults at the moment, that's not an issue that I really need to deal with. But in the past, it is something I've struggled with a little. Yeah, especially with kids. I don't like forcing anyone to learn something they don't want to learn. It doesn't seem the right way to me. So that includes children, But funnily enough, when I was in Vietnam teaching kids, they were also enthusiastic, They loved it. So I don't know what that was all about, but I found kids to be very enthusiastic, So I don't know. Maybe it was just those children. Maybe it's Vietnamese children. I don't know. But I had a great experience with the kids in Vietnam. And these were 8 and 9-year-olds. So I didn't have that problem, luckily. Is to be necessary for this sentence. She's shown to be bleeding heavily. She is shown bleeding heavily. She was shown to be bleeding. She's shown to be bleeding heavily. So it's a bit weird, this one, Dan, but basically, if you say shown to be, then that means demonstrated. So it's like she was demonstrated to be bleeding heavily. In other words, they demonstrated that she was bleeding heavily. Or she's been demonstrated to be bleeding heavily. They have demonstrated that she is bleeding heavily. Right? So show to be bleeding heavily is demonstrated to be bleeding heavily. However, without to be, it's different. She is shown bleeding heavily means she's in a picture, and in the picture she is bleeding heavily. So with she is shown bleeding heavily, that's like she is depicted bleeding heavily. So she appears in the picture bleeding heavily. So you actually have a different meaning with to be or without to be in that case. How to deal with shy students. This is an interesting one. I think I'm quite good with shy students because I was myself a shy young adult and a shy teenager, and I am an introvert. Would you believe? So I think I'm quite good at dealing with shy students, actually, because I understand how they feel. I think you do the obvious thing, right? So never embarrass them. Never say anything or do anything in the class to embarrass them, right? So if they make a mistake on the spot when talking in front of many people, you don't correct it on the spot. No on-the-spot correction for shy students unless you think they're ready for it. So unless their confidence has gone up. Don't force them to give a presentation in front of 20 students. If someone's very shy, the first thing they need to do is to talk with 3 other students in a small group, right? And then maybe in 6 months or a year, then they can talk to 6 students, and then later they can talk to the class. You build them up. When you correct their errors, you don't say, oh, here's Maria's error. You say, this is an error that many students in the class have made. And you don't personalize it. You show that it's an impersonal error. Oh, here's an error that I heard some people in the class making, right? So you don't highlight them. One thing about shy students is they often tend to be very obedient. Weird thing to say, but something like that. They will follow your direction as a teacher. So you can, in some ways, that can be very helpful, you know? Like if you say to a shy student, don't speak Spanish in class, please. They won't do it. Sometimes they might, right? But I'm speaking in general. So there's actually a lot of advantages to shy students, right? I think the big thing is just really don't embarrass them. There's some people who can take embarrassment. They don't care. They're always talking, right? But the shy students, different approach. I don't find shy students difficult. Herbal medicine. Talk about English in the medical field. Well, I think herbal medicine and the medical field are kind of different things, right? I could do a class about that. I think I have done a class about that earlier. Yeah, uncontrolled take. Yeah, definitely sleepwalker. You have to be careful. You can mess yourself up. But, you know, we live in a world where you can get all the information that you need. You can get so much information and then check things. So do it. It's your health. It's your future. Do it. There's a really good website I will recommend. Okay. And they should sponsor me because I recommend them. It's examine.com. I just posted it in the chat. And they are fantastic for looking at vitamins, supplements, the study. They have all the studies. Great website. Check it out. And examine.com, you should sponsor me. I'll tell you what, folks, send them an email. Say, hey, this guy keeps shouting you out. So could you sponsor him, please? Yeah. I used to be a fan, now I'm a whole air conditioner. What does it mean? And then also, what is the difference between both beat and win? Defeat, beat, and win. Okay. So, okay. I used to be a fan, now I'm a whole air conditioner is a joke. And it's what we call a play on words. A play on words. So they are using the fact that fan has 2 meanings, which is a fan, to be cool, but also a fan, like, oh, you're so cool. I'm a big fan of your work. I like your work, right? So fan, but also I'm a fan of yours. I'm a big fan of you, right? So that's it. And then they said, now I'm a whole air conditioner. So remember, fan is this thing we use to be cool, but now we're a whole air conditioner, so we're really cool. Obviously, we can't say that I'm a big air conditioner of Elvis Presley, but it's funny because it's a play on words. As for defeat, beat, and win, so defeat is the general term. Like you defeat someone, you defeat your opponent, which means I win, they lose, I defeated them. Okay? Beat is similar to that, except it's more colloquial. I beat them. I defeated them, more general, more neutral. I beat them, colloquial. It's colloquial because beat actually comes from bum, 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 right? Like a fight. Okay, that's beating someone. But colloquially, it means defeat. Now, win, you don't win someone. You win a competition or a prize. So, I won the game. I defeated you. I won the prize, I defeated you, like that. So that's the difference. Defeat, general. Beat, colloquial. Win, the prize or the competition. Smoothie is a kind of drink where you use a blender or mixer with some fruit, put the fruit in, like strawberries, bananas, and then we have like a kind of milkshake, but with no milk, and that's called a smoothie. That's definitely not the case. What's this? What's the difference between as and to be? For example, I know him to be a good hunter. I know him as a good hunter. I know him as relates to the way that I know him. So I know him as a good hunter means I know him, and the way that I have known him is him being a good hunter. So he's a good hunter and I know him in that area. I know him as a good hunter. It's the way that I know him. But I know him to be a good hunter means I have the knowledge that he is a good hunter. In other words, I can conclude that he is a good hunter from my knowledge. Now, I know those things seem very similar, but there is some difference. For example, I know him as a student means I'm a teacher, he's a student, and I know him in that way. But I know him to be a student means I know about him that he is a student. Maybe not my student. And maybe I know him as a friend. Maybe he's my friend. But I know him to be a student. So it's about the way I know someone versus what I know about them. No more questions from Dan. He gives me a headache. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for the challenging questions. Again, I have to wonder, where do you get this stuff? We could make other uncountable nouns countable, as in, let's catch up for coffee. I ordered a wine, meaning a portion of something. Yeah, with food, that's often the case. If it's countable and uncountable, it means the substance, like coffee, like I don't have enough coffee in the cupboard, versus 3 coffees being the cup. And lots of foods have that system. What do you like better, teaching a group of students at school or a private student? What do you like and dislike in these cases? Can you imagine doing just one of them, or do you prefer to combine both? That's a good question, Zoya. I like talking about education. So, let's get into this one. School isn't quite the right word for it, because I don't teach at a school. I don't teach at a school. I teach at a college. And recently, I've taught at colleges, universities, and sometimes private language institutions. And all of those are a bit different, but they have similarities, which is a classroom, some technology to use, different numbers of students. Normally the number of students is between 12 and 18 these days, 12 to 18 students. And honestly, that is probably my favorite way to teach. I think actually the perfect number for me is 12. 12 students in a room, a nice room. I think that makes a difference, by the way, when the room is nice. When the room's horrible, it does change things. You have to work on it. But a nice room, and I want speakers, good speakers to use sound, and I want an IWB, interactive whiteboard, or some technology. That's great. I can work without that. And I did in Japan. We had no interactive whiteboard. We just had a whiteboard and a pen and no photocopier. That was Japan. That was at university. And that was okay. But ideally, I want the technology because that's useful. But in person with about 12 students, that's the most fun. I like one-to-one classes online as well, of course. Hello, all my private students. I do like it. But being perfectly honest, my favorite is being in the class physically with a group of students. That's 100% when I am in my element. But I do also enjoy private students to the extent where if someone offered me so much work at a university that I had no time for private students, I would probably say no. Unless the offer was too good to refuse, I would say no. Because I don't want to lose that part of my life. I like having private students. I like the online teaching. And it's good for a bit of difference, you know? It's good to be doing different things, not always the same, in the same class, in and out, bum, 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 right? If you have these different things going on, then it makes you more rounded teacher. As for can I imagine doing just one of them? Of course. I've been teaching for 16 years, Zoya, and there are times when I've only done the private classes. Like, for example, 2020, 2021, I was exclusively online for Oxford Online English. That's the only thing I did in 2020 and 2021. And we can go back to 2010, 2011, 2012. I only taught in colleges and private language institutions. So I had no private classes and no online work back then. So I did that. I prefer the combination. I like to change things up. I like to mix things about. I don't like to do the same thing over and over. That's not my thing. Everybody who knows me knows that about me. And they find it a positive thing about me and also a negative thing about me. And my students think that too. I know they do. Hi. They do. They like that we do weird stuff in class, but they also don't like that we do weird stuff in class. I think sometimes they think, oh, Rich, just teach us the exam. Please stop talking about aliens. But then other times they think like, oh, this is interesting. We're doing about aliens today, you know. So I think they do that. And it's the same for my wife, by the way. I think sometimes she thinks like, well, it's always interesting to have Rich around. And then I think other times she thinks, can you just make fried potatoes without putting in a bit of pepper and a bit of paprika and a bit of... Just make them like you did last week. Yeah. That's me, though. You know, I like to make things different. It keeps things interesting. There's no best method, is there, Manuel? There's my preferred method, and there's loads of different ways of doing it. And as I've said recently, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's an idiom for you. There's more than one way to skin a cat. Oh, it's a terrible idiom, isn't it, actually? Okay, all roads lead to Rome. I need a celebration theme that's like, hooray! Oh, I know what I can do. Thank you very much, Manuel. I do very much appreciate that. Do you know, folks, that when Manuel says that, he donates a coffee to me. And he's done that almost every stream for months and months and months. So thank you very much, Manuel, for supporting the channel. You're definitely the number one supporter right now. There's no doubt about that. And if anyone else wants to support the channel, you can look down below the video and there's a link that says, buy me a coffee. And you can do that. Thank you. It's much appreciated, but it's not, don't feel you have to, only if you can spare it. Do you have any shy students online? I don't know about shy students. You know, one of the things actually is it's quite difficult to tell if someone's shy, one, when it's online, and two, in one-to-one. Because I'm a bit of an introvert as well, I think that often other like shy students and introverts, they recognize that although I'm kind of loud and talkative, they recognize something similar about me. So they're not so shy when we talk. So it's quite difficult actually to recognize that. The obvious situation when I can recognize it is when we're in class, and then you can see when someone's shy, right? Because there's group situations and so on. So I'd have to say my answer would be not right now, not that I recognize it, but I do teach a few people who say they are introverts. That's all I can say. Yeah, I agree with that, Manuel. And also, sometimes it's best to just take the pressure off. If you ask a question and someone's shy and they get stuck, then you can go, have a think and we'll come back to that. Manuel, what do you think? Then we let Manuel talk and then, and Cadman, you got an idea now? You know, you can kind of check back with them, give them some time to think. Give them some time to think, I should have said this, I should have said that. And then you say, oh, come back to you now. How about now? Really? Did I miss the class? I requested it before. Sorry, Alia? Did you miss? Oh, the natural, about supplements. I think it was a class that I did on Oxford Online English several years ago. Okay, let's do it. Let's do it. It's done. Since you're a regular, Alia, it is done. That's our class. You know what I'm going to do? I am going to make a note right now in the place that makes it impossible for me to avoid, which is I'm going to create the lesson document on Google Docs, and then it's there, and I'll be thinking about it. So it's going to happen. What we're going to call it? Natural medicine, supplements, natural health, natural medicine. I don't like medicine. Not sure if that's the right term. Natural health and supplements. I don't know what I'll call it. But anyway, it's done. It's made. Okay, so that will be a class in the future. Maybe next Wednesday. Maybe next week. I don't know. Because I'm an inspiration-driven teacher, I will need to be inspired to make the material. However, it is going to happen because I've made the document. So that's what we'll do. Right. Yeah, I think you can't go wrong with a multivitamin, actually. They do recommend that pregnant women don't take any vitamin A supplementation, though. So if you are a pregnant woman, don't take a multivitamin, because pregnant women should take no vitamin A supplementation. Hello, Gui. And I have no idea because I'm coming to this quite late. Okay, Alia. Okay. As I said, I think it was Oxford Online English, all right? Don't mix vitamins with food. I think it depends, Manuel. If it's water soluble, no. But if it's fat soluble, yes. And Julia is now using the idiom in reverse. Smoothie is my cup of tea. How to differentiate between adjectives and adverbs. For example, I thought soon, fast, long, and early were adjectives. Turned out they were adverbs in a book that I've just read. That's a good question, Alia. And thanks to that question, we are going to resurrect the notes. Ta-da! They're back. Okay. So how can you tell that something is an adjective or an adverb? Damn good question. If something's an adjective, then you can put it in a noun phrase. Right? So let's take a noun phrase like a teacher. Right? And let's go through some of the words that you just spoke about. So, a soon teacher. Does that make sense? Well, it doesn't make sense to me. So that's not an adjective. It doesn't work. A fast teacher. Does that make sense? Yes, it does. And actually, fast can be an adjective. So that's good, isn't it? All right. What about long? A long teacher. Yes, that's good. We can have a long teacher. It's kind of a weird thing, but we can. So that's good. What about an early teacher? He's an early teacher. I'm going to say yeah. This one's kind of on the borderline, but I'm going to say yeah, you can do that. Which means early can be an adjective. So what we know from this is that all these things can be adjectives, and in these cases, they are adjectives. So if you can use something in a noun phrase like this, then it is an adjective. And by the way, you can flip it as well. For example, wait, is that a good test? That's not a good test. Let's not do that. Let's do it like that in the noun phrase. Safer. Safer. Now, how about adverbs? I want to tell you a secret about adverbs. Adverbs are basically anything. And certainly they are anything which doesn't have another clear function. Now, why do I say that? Well, because what is an adverb? An adverb is a word which modifies the verb. Right? However, is it possible to add a word to a sentence which does not modify the verb? Is that possible? Is that possible? To add a word to a sentence that doesn't modify the verb? Surely everything modifies the verb, does it not? If I say, like, if I say that, can we not say that this verb, the meaning of that verb is modified by the article? Is it not? The teacher is crazy. Our teacher is crazy. Is there not a modification of that verb? Because in my opinion there is, which means that articles in some way are like adverbs. Right. So that's the weird thing about adverbs. And obviously I just gave you the extreme position. That's the extreme position. Now, in more general terms, linguists don't quite go that far, but they acknowledge that adverbs are all over the place. And so they often take to calling them adverb phrases or adverbials, right? To kind of get around this. Oh, it's not a pure adverb, it's an adverbial, right? Like we take something like in the park and we say, oh, that's an adverbial, right? Like I ran in the park. In this case, in the park is an adverbial because it sort of acts like an adverb on ran to modify ran so that now ran is in the park. We could also call it a prepositional phrase, but all prepositional phrases act like adverbs. So all prepositional phrases are adverbials. Okay, so that's the weird thing about adverbs. So you said that it turned out they were adverbs. Well, yeah, pretty much everything can be adverbs. But now let's get to the specific ones you spoke about, because you spoke about some interesting ones. Fast is super interesting because it absolutely, in that form, can be an adjective and an adverb. And you'll see in the dictionary that it's written like that as well. And there's an example, a very clear example of that, where the first one obviously is an adjective. Don't want to do that because that doesn't make sense. Do that. The first one's obviously an adjective, and the second one is very clearly an adverb. And actually, that cannot be an adjective, can it? It's impossible to be an adjective there. How can that be? It's not an adjective. That's definitely an adverb, right? And this is actually one where people make mistakes. They try to make the adverb by doing that, okay? It's actually very common people do that. But classically, that's not correct. So it's just fast and fast. Right. There's another one interesting like that, which is hard. And there we've got it. It's a hard exam. We studied hard. First situation, we got the adjective. Second situation, we got the adverb. This one is super confusing because you can think, oh, hardly, that's wrong. Oh, no, it's not wrong. It exists. But it means something totally different. It means we almost failed, but didn't. So you hardly passed means you almost didn't pass, but you did. So it means like, oh, just about. Something like just about. They're the weird ones. They are the weird ones. Normally, with adjectives and adverbs, normally what we have is we have this situation where the adjective looks something like that. And then to get the adverb, you add li. So that's the rule for regular adverbs. Creating regular adverbs. I've already given you the weird bit that actually everything's an adverb and the world is crazy and screw your rules. But here's the rules. Right, so in rule terms, we can add li and get the adverbs. In this case, it's happily. As we know, when you add a suffix on a word that ends in y, the y becomes an I. You know, I've never met a student who didn't already know that rule. So anyway, that's the rule. So that's creating regular adverbs. And can we do it with the other one? Yeah, I got up early. There's your adverb for early. And what about long? By the way, a good test for an adverb, let's put it here. A good test for an adverb is to put it after a verb, but don't use be or seem or anything like that. Okay. Don't use any verb that can take a complement. That's basically what I mean. You have to use a verb that has no object or that only takes a in fact, just use intransitive verbs. Yeah. So get up is pretty intransitive, isn't it? What's the other one? Long. Long. As an adverb. Long. I can't do this. Is long an adverb? Can't do it. How is long an adverb? Show me. Even though I said before anything can be an adverb. But yeah, can anyone show me how long can be a pure adverb? Because I'm struggling actually. Too long? It's too no, that's an adjective. He waited long for me. Let me think about that. He waited long for me. That's a good example, Zoya, but let me think. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's an adverb. Maybe it is. He waited long for me. He waited short. He waited short for me. No, that's weird, isn't it? Waited long. Maybe you're right. Nice one, Zoya. It's pretty good. He waited long for me. Just like that. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. Well done. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. It's very specific use though, isn't it? Did you wait long? Is it definitely an adverb? Yeah, it's a weird one. That's a weird one. This is one that I would like to have an argument about. It's definitely a weird one because I wonder, is it actually an adverb or is it like a weird kind of noun or idiomatic noun? Is it like an idiomatic noun, which means a long time? Instead of an adverb. Have you been teaching English long? Yeah. Have you been teaching English a long time? Yeah. A long teacher. What's a long teacher? What's a long teacher? What's a long teacher? Come on. Anawat, I thought you were supposed to be a top student. What's all this? What are all these basic questions about long teachers? You know what? This is the age of generative AI, which means I can show you what a long teacher is. You ready for this? Come on, GPT, don't let me down. The weight is kidding me. Oh, that's perfect. Oh, that is perfect. Okay, are you ready for this? You asked, what's a long teacher, he says. Okay. The enemy's low on health actually is really good, Dan. I prefer the enemy's low on health. The enemy's health is low is all right, but the enemy's low on health, it's great. Are you a video game developer? Yeah, the enemy's low on health is actually better, in my opinion. That's right, Vitelli. That is what I wanted to say, basically, that as a good hunter means it's the way in which you know him. It's the way I know him. In other words, how do you know him? I know him as a hunter. So I've seen him as a hunter. My relationship with him is as a hunter. Yeah, it's more than just witnessing or seeing, actually. It's the nature of your relationship with the person. So I know him as a hunter, but not as a person. It means that your relationship is he's a hunter and you're a whatever, an observer or a fellow hunter or whatever. I'm hungry, folks. I want to get some food. I want to go to the butcher's and get some sausages. Oh, yeah, sausages. Just like that guy, sausage teacher. Oh. How do you handle a situation when an online student copies the answer? It's obvious to you as a teacher, but the student denies it. Copies the answer? Copies it from what? So yeah, right. Listen. Let's say I'm your teacher, all right? And we have online class, and you tell me some ridiculously over-the-top answer that's not your English, right? Then I'll say to you, okay, are you reading this from ChatGPT? And if you say, no, I'm not, then I'll say, okay, well, I'm going to believe you because you're my student and I trust you, and I trust you not to lie to me, because really I'm here to do my best to help you. But it is important that we know that GPT is a very useful tool. However, what I really want to practice right now is I want to practice your ability to speak fluently, use your notes to speak to me, but not a script, not reading from a script. And that's what's going to benefit your fluency. I can't make you do it, and I can't ensure that you're not reading, but I think that's the best thing for you. And that's my advice as a teacher, that's how we do it. All right? So let's try another one. Ultimately, I think you need to cultivate honesty, Zoya, with your students. You need to cultivate honesty. If someone is dishonest to save face, then that's one thing that we can deal with. I think everyone sometimes has been dishonest to save face. Save face means you feel embarrassed and you don't want to say something because you feel ashamed or embarrassed. Okay, everybody does that sometimes. But if someone's just being dishonest for some other reason, then I think we need to try to encourage them to get away from that. Okay. Ultimately, I can't force someone to tell me the truth. And really, I'm a helper. I'm not here I'm not here to get the whip and whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. What are you doing? Get out of my classroom. Right? This is not the 19th century. I'm here to help you improve yourself. And I want you to cooperate with me. If you don't want to cooperate with me, well, then what can I do? Just keep holding out my hand and say, hey, cooperate with me. You want to keep paying me to have this where I hold out my hand and you say some lies or trick me, you know? Okay. We're not going to get anywhere though, you know? I hadn't known him long. Yeah, it's a good one too. Flat adverbs. Nice. Where do we get that? It's the first time I've heard that. 1 second. Very good. Very good. Yeah, you see, my main reference points for language, other than my experience, because of course I'm a descriptive teacher, but when we talk about prescriptive language, so like the grammar rules, I refer to Michael Swan and Martin Parrott. They are my reference points. So they are my grammarians that I draw from. Martin Parrott, Grammar for English Language Teachers, and Michael Swan, Practical English in Use or something, whatever it's called. Neither of them use the term flat adverbs, so I've not heard it. But I like it, actually. It's a good term. I kind of like it. I'm going to use that. Thank you, Vitelli. Yeah, I mean, the problem here, Aulia, is it's not only an adverb, is it? So say, oh, the word long is an adverb and nothing else. That's a ridiculous statement. Hello there, Mujahid. Good to have you here. When to use differentiate and distinguish, Rich? Well, Alia, differentiate and distinguish are both nice words. They're both nice academic words. Let's come up with just some answers off the top of my head. They're very synonymous. They are very synonymous. So they're close. They're very close in meaning. How do we differentiate between this and this? How can we distinguish? How do we differentiate him and her? How do we distinguish? Wow, they're so close. I think, Aulia, that they are very, very, very close. Okay, I'm going to say this. Differentiate has a taste of logic, statistics, maths, science. Distinguish has more of a flavor. This is how I teach language now, folks. I talk about taste and flavor. Distinguish has more of a flavor of sense, perception, seeming. Conscious awareness. That's all I'm going to say. However, they are extremely close in use and meaning. Okay. That's all I can say about that, Alia, really. They seem super close to me. They're both good words. And I would use them pretty much interchangeably, I think. Like, how do we distinguish this from this? How can we differentiate this and this? Yeah. What's the difference between in class and in the class? Give me some examples. This is I'm gonna just refer you to a live stream, Dan. Sorry, but I did a whole stream on this, and I think what I talked about applies to this question. So there was a class that I did on articles, and we did that. When did we do that? Wow, was it that long ago? January. Hello, everybody. Sorry if you heard that. Yeah, it was here. That one. I'll post it in the chat. So you can go there and you can find out all about that. We spoke about articles, and specifically you want to focus on the use of no article versus using an article. I'll give you the summary after I post this link in the chat. I'll give you the quick notes. All right. Wow, you can you can see the difference in weight there, can't you? Yeah, I've lost a little bit of weight since then. Health routine's going good. Hey, he looks all right as well, though. He looks all right. Not too bad. Right. What was it? Yeah, the footnotes. So essentially, use no article when the contextual focus is on a general category. So in class means the quality of being in an educational class, right? And use an article when the contextual focus is on a specific instance or group. This is the thing, it's not just a specific instance, but it can be a group, like the classes that we had with Teacher Rich. Okay. in the classes or in the class, meaning that we learned this in some specific class or classes with someone. And when you use the, it means I think that you know. So when you use the, this is a good rule for you in English. When you use the, it means I think that you know the one I'm talking about. That's what it means to say the. Thank you, Pavia. That's a wonderful thing to say. Okay. Catnap for the first time. Did I use that? Who used catnap? Just go ahead, Mujahid. I'm trying to get away here, so ask your question quickly. Sintu Vlogs Joshi. Well, hello there. Namaste. Welcome to Satsang. How you doing? Smash that like button and hit subscribe. Thank you very much. $34 degrees. Woo! Dear Rich, the coffee's getting cold. The coffee is done. It's done. As you can, by the way, I had the brown around the outside is because I had 2 scoops of cocoa in there. It was quite nice, actually. It was espresso, so I made it very strong, and I put 2 scoops of cocoa, and it tasted like dark chocolate. Oof, it was a spicy boy. Is that true? Is that true? We can differentiate them, but these ones we can't differentiate. So how do we distinguish them? Distinguish. The way to distinguish these, the way to differentiate them, I'm not sure. I'm sorry, Vitelli, but I can't verify that. Because to me, that difference in meaning is not clear, and I'm not sure if that's how people use it. And remember also that the dictionary is not necessarily the best source for this, because what we want to know is, how do people use it? Now, I can give you my experience as an English communicator with 41 years of life experience, but I don't know how everyone uses it everywhere. So, in my opinion, it's a really close synonym. And I'm not sure about that. But nice try. And it's possible. I don't know. All right, we've got to the end. I didn't think I could make it. All right. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for joining me today. I always appreciate the support just by coming, smashing that like button and saying hello. It's great. I'm happy that I can help you with your English, and if anything I've said has helped you in other ways, then even better. I wish you all a lovely, lovely, lovely weekend and a lovely rest of your week. I should, before I do these outros, I should have like a thing ready to say that's like, and this is the thing I have ready to say to leave you with, to leave your minds just full of information, but I don't have one. Get out there, have a coffee, enjoy the sun for 30 minutes, and then do what you love doing. And smile and say hello to your neighbor, and try not to lie, but instead to tell the truth, because it's always a good thing to tell the truth. Thank you very much, everybody. My name's been ProfRich, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everyone.